John Harbaugh went off on the Baltimore Ravens secondary and also hinted at some potential changes. We talk about what Harbaugh had to say. Lamar Jackson getting some more MVP support from players. Also, Kyle Van Noy flamed the referees for what happened on Thursday night. All that and more coming up next here on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here today, making Locked On Ravens both a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day, free and available for you all podcasting platforms. That includes in video form on YouTube, where you can like and subscribe, also in audio form, where you can follow along and subscribe. We bring you 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage, regardless of how you watch in video form or listen in audio form. It's the same show either which way. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is sponsored by Ultimate GM. Use the promo code Locked On NFL, all caps, inside the game store to receive a free boost to your franchise. We are back, and with us today, our Taco Tuesday guest, it is former Baltimore Ravens wide receiver, Super Bowl champion, Qadry Ismail. Q, it's been a little while since the Ravens played. We're not talking about a game from Sunday. The Ravens take care of business. They come back on the Bengals, and they win that game 35-34. That 2-point conversion kind of gave me flashbacks to the 2021 season when the Ravens were going for it for two on seemingly every single last possession, and they weren't coming up with the win. But this time, Baltimore, they had the 2-point conversion gods on their side, and they pull out the victory. And now, Q, we look ahead to Steelers week, and I think everybody in Baltimore knows how important this week is.
Well, I mean, you just flashed me back to those 2-point conversions, and I was like, oh, my God, I remember – I think there was even a Mark Andrews opportunity for a 2-point conversion in Pittsburgh that came up short, and just was a nightmare of a red zone offense. However, 2019, we had a red zone offense that no matter what you did, you were just going to score. I think part of that reason is because you got 22 back there with 8. You got 22 back there with 8, and you got 89, and you got 80, although 80 didn't play. But you also have just a plethora of options. So that gives you the opportunity to be the stud that you are as far as Lamar Jackson doing his 2-point conversion, because there's too many guys to look at and kind of concentrate on. When I look at the bigger picture of Pittsburgh Steelers, mother of pearl, 7-2. Their first division opponent is going to be the Ravens. I think this is awesome that they're 7-2. I think it's weird that they're not a just kicking butt, taking names later team, but just a typical Mike Tomlin, resilient, going to give you everything you got kind of a team. And that's what makes it so exciting. But yet I am nervous because it is the Pittsburgh Steelers and Lamar Jackson. For whatever the reason, he's owned everybody else except for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yep, 1-7 over the last 8 games. The Ravens are against the Steelers. Lamar has never played back-to-back games against the Steelers in a season. He has missed, whether it be due to injury, him not starting. Obviously, that was his rookie season, or the Ravens just don't have a need to play him in some of those seasons in those Week 18 games because they've already locked up seeding. And so Lamar has not played back-to-back games against Pittsburgh for that reason. But part of the reason the Steelers have been so successful recently, at least, is because they inserted Russell Wilson into their starting lineup. And the offense now is humming for them. Russell Wilson, he looks back, maybe not prime Seattle Russell Wilson, but a lot better than he looked in Denver. And with George Pickens and everybody, we're certainly going to be getting into that matchup a little bit as the show goes on. But I mentioned Russell Wilson because the secondary, Baltimore secondary, is going to have to stop Russell Wilson. And what has Baltimore secondary not really done in a very effective clip this season? And that is stop opposing quarterbacks. So they've had great games, but those have been kind of few and far in between compared to what we have seen. The Ravens, Q, are just 314 passing yards away from matching their entire 2023 season total. And we're here now, it's week 11. So the stuff you don't want to see. And John Harbaugh talked about the secondary a lot during his press conference on Monday. And he was asked about some of the stuff. Obviously, Jamar Chase, Q, just absolutely goes off again against the Ravens. In 8 games, Q, he has almost 1,000 yards against the Ravens. I mean, if there's one team Jamar likes playing, it is that Baltimore Ravens team. Jamar goes for over 260 in the game. But John Harbaugh talks a little bit about how he got open way too much, and the Ravens have to just play their coverages better. They have to coach things better. And he ended up saying that they have to play the coverages better in certain situations, especially the deep middle and intermediate middle of the field. Those are the areas that have been problems for the Ravens this season, and John Harbaugh said as such. So, Q, you've beaten your fair share of coverages over the course of your days. You know how to get free and find zones in a defense and exploit different weaknesses. So for a Ravens defense that has been struggling in the intermediate, deep part of the field, especially in the middle, how do you think this gets fixed? Because we're here in week 11 and, we're talking about, oh, they need to fix it. They need to fix it. They're going to fix it. But, we're more than halfway through the year and it hasn't happened yet.
There's a lot to unpack there. I think first and foremost, Ja'Marr Chase, they're horses for courses. And I mean, I know like the Tennessee Titans, even the Pittsburgh Steelers for that matter. I mean, I've had some epic games, my career game against the Pittsburgh Steelers, but then overall average game historically was against the Tennessee Titans. And I mean, I just have big games. And so you play a division opponent, you kind of, feel them out and you just know what you know, and you just have a day. When it comes to the coverages and the way in which this Ravens defense is playing, I mean, it's laughable. It's embarrassing. It's what Marlon said, like, you know what? We got the talent. We just need to go ahead and play. Like, in other words, you're having these great practices. You're understanding your assignment. And then all of a sudden you get in the game, you just choke. I mean, I guess there was the report out there that on the one touchdown that Ja'Marr Chase had, you're literally looking at Marcus Williams trying not to get too close to him because he was nervous about the PFF grade and it being blamed on him. But when you look at the scheme of the route combination and as a receiver, that's just route 101. I'm going to run a post. The inside guy is going to either run an in or a deep out. Your safety is going to have to come down and cover it, and I'm going to run over top of him. Well, when I ran it, we had Chris Carter. When the Bengals ran it, in other words, Chris Carter, Hall of Famer, when the Bengals ran it, they had just a guy. And that jag, like, if I'm looking at Chris Carter, okay, fine, there's a strong possibility he's going to get the ball over Qadry. So I got to respect it and come down and play him while now I'm going over the top. And, Chris is pulling coverage and it gives me an opportunity to score. When you're talking about Ja'Marr Chase and a guy, well, no, you look at Ja'Marr Chase and you're like, I got to be deeper than the deepest and I got to make sure I'm covering Ja'Marr Chase. There's something wrong there fundamentally when you can't just recognize football 101. Now I have nothing to do with coaching. That's how everything to do is between your ears and you just pretty much choking. I mean, that's a on-field hiding technique. Oh, well, because the guy's right there, I got to – no, you're just not getting it done. So coverages, we could talk about them for days, whether it be zone, whether it be man, whether it be, single high, whether it be cover zero, whether it be 2 deep, whether it be one lurk, 2 invert, 2 man. Like, just go on and on and on. The bottom line is that, the middle of the field has been vulnerable. Tampa 2, Agent Zero is playing like a zero and not really doing what we've seen him do. So it's not like I'm sitting here, oh, Qadry, you're, criticizing Roquan and it's bad. No, Roquan should be criticizing Roquan because we've seen it on film and he's not in position. We've seen Marcus Williams not in position. There are times where Trent Simpson gets out of position as well. There are times where, Kyle Hamilton is expecting help and he's rushing or he's coming down to cover. And again, you're just not in position. And guys, whether it be Eddie Jackson, Michael Jackson, Freddie Jackson, and Janet Jackson, whatever the Jackson is, you need to fix it because right now that secondary is just broken. And Brandon Stevens Again, you can even put him in the mix too. We can go on, but it ain't pretty and it's broke badly.
Yep, it needs to be fixed. And again, I agree where it's not a talent issue here, but the talent's just not performing like we know that they can. I think that's what makes it so disappointing is like we didn't come into the season queue with these huge question marks in the secondary of like, do they have enough depth? They have a lot of good players, but those players outside of Marlon, Kyle Hamilton, and Ardarius Washington, I want to give him a shout out too. He's played pretty well this season, but you've seen regression from Brandon Stevens. You've seen regression from Marcus Williams. You've seen regression from a lot of different players. And whether it's schematic with Zach or execution-wise with the players, it's just all encompassing and it hasn't worked out. And so Marlon Humphrey and John Harbaugh both had this to say, Q, about the secondary and just kind of the practices, because Marlon and John have said, look, they've had good practices. John Harbaugh mentioned it too. The Ravens have had good practices, but it hasn't translated to the field consistently. And, Harbaugh talked about how, you can't not tackle stuff on in-breaking routes or let things get behind you. There are certain times that you just get beat, right? It happens. Every team gets beat. But to have those little things, John Harbaugh said, those are not okay. You get beat every now and then, here and there, but it's just happening way too much is what John Harbaugh said. So from your experience, Q, were there weeks where you felt like you and the team had a really good week of practice, felt like you were on your P's and Q's and, you knew the game plan, you knew your assignments, and then you got to the game and it just was nothing like that?
So Jacksonville Jaguars, believe it or not, they were our kryptonite, and you see the way they were just stacked as a team and they, played well. You had to play your best to beat them. And yeah, we would be going into that game and it was like, okay, we gotta play. If we don't play, we ain't gonna win this game. And there was like some consternation. The thing is, it's your poise and recognizing, all right, let's go out there. We know that the other team is a good, strong team, but we also believe in one another and there's no missed assignments. What I'm feeling is that these guys, they don't believe they're a good team. They're playing not with the extreme confidence level. And it's like, oh my God, I made a mistake. And then all of a sudden it starts snowballing out of control. You got guys that on the front end, you got to force, pressure on the quarterback. You're not getting to the quarterback. It gives a receiver a lot of time. And I don't care how good you are. You give quarterback time to throw, the quarterback's going to make those throws. You got to get pressure on the quarterback. One hand feeds the other. But yeah, that's what it is. It's sometimes you feel like you go out there, you're having these, tremendous practices, but what is a tremendous practice in today's age where you don't have the full contact, you don't have the fullness, and it's in the middle of the season now, so you can't really have that physical dragging out type of practice because that's not going to be beneficial to anyone. So it's between the ears yet again. You got to be mentally on point. If you could be mentally on point, that's great. But if you can't, then you're hurting yourself. And it's just not helping anybody. And I think that's where, for Lamar Jackson, for this offense, for the Ravens as an organization saying, hey, AFC Championship game, blah, 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 grow off of it, all those things. Well, you're in the thick of it right now, and you're going to be battle tested. Like we were saying, oh man, they started off the season. It's going to be, a tough one, murderous row of games and quarterbacks. You're about to go into another stretch of games where it's going to be challenging, and it's AFC opponents that you're going to be facing. How you going to face out in that regards? Because we just saw a game where the Kansas City Chiefs, they had a division opponent. Their division opponent, the Denver Broncos, they know them. We know them. Hey, blah, blah, blah. Tight game. But in the end, they wound up winning. We got to figure out how this secondary, how that linebacking core can manage things, because there's no way, as of right now, this is a squad that's built to win the Super Bowl.
The offense is historic. Now the defense has to follow suit. Not even at a historic level. They don't even have to be average, Q. The pass defense just has to not be a complete liability. And I think that just boosts their Super Bowl chances by however many times you want to boost it. So John Harbaugh kind of laid into the secondary a little bit, and obviously there are a lot of different reasons why, but coming up in the second part of the show, we'll talk about some stuff that Harbaugh had to say about potential changes the Ravens could make, and some changes they are not considering. So be sure to stay tuned. A lot to get to on the show. First, the show is brought to you by Ultimate Pro Football GM. Hey, Ravens fans, remember our great partner, Ultimate Pro Football GM? Well, they're back, and they have added an amazing new game mode that I need to tell you about. The game that has you step up into the shoes of a former franchise GM and lead it to glory now has a head coach career mode. So on top of getting to build your dynasty by drafting players, signing free agents, and hiring coaching staff, you also now get to call offensive plays during the games as well. Additionally, you'll dig into new tools that you can work with, such as individual training camps and upgrade the negotiation system. So this fun and realistic game just got a lot better. If you already have it installed, be sure to do an update so you can try out the new mode. If you don't have it yet, download it right now. It's a must-have for all football fans. I love it. I know you will too. Ultimate Pro Football GM is completely free, has no ads, and 100% playable offline. Play on the go as you want and when you want to. And here's a special offer for Locked On fans. Use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL, all caps, inside the game store to receive a free boost to your franchise. Make sure to get it, as this perk will jumpstart your play and give you the advantage you'll want in creating a dynasty. Download the games, visit ultimate-gm.com, ultimate-gm.com, or look it up on the app stores. Ultimate Pro Football GM, start your dynasty today. And the show is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when we get 100 in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats for live play-by-play and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You're started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. We are back. Our second segment, Locked On Ravens, with Qadry Ismail. I am Kevin Allshaker here on a Tuesday edition of the show. Ravens moved to 7-3 with their big 35-34 win over the Cincinnati Bengals, and now they have that Pittsburgh Steelers week staring them right in the face. Now, Q, John Harbaugh was asked about Marlon Humphrey, saying that something has got to change. He was obviously speaking very broadly when he said that. I mean, look, something does have to change. I think you and I and everybody else could admit that. But Harbaugh's answer to this, because he was asked, do you anticipate or will you look at any potential personnel changes, any moves, including responsibilities? And he said, quote, of course you consider everything. Everything is on the table always. I don't think that's any news story. It's definitely not headline worthy, because that's what you do. That's what I spent the weekend doing. That's what our coaches spent the weekend doing. And that's what our players spent the weekend doing on the back end. So look at every aspect of it and pursue the best path we can think of and that we see going forward with a great sense of urgency. Like I said, we pointed towards the Pittsburgh game in terms of what they have and who they have doing it. Go out there and play good football. So you got some coach speak in there for sure, right? Obviously, John Harbaugh's not going to come out and say, yeah, we're going to change up everything or we're going to do this. He's not going to lay that out for his opponents to feast on. But I think that it's interesting because we've seen Baltimore tinker with their lineup a little bit. Obviously, the Marcus Williams thing I'm going to kind of separate as isolated as an incident because we don't really know what happened behind the scenes there. But they made Eddie Jackson a game day inactive, and he hasn't really seen the field over the last couple of weeks. They've been trying Arthur Millette in certain spots, or Darius Washington. Obviously, they're trying to move Kyle Hamilton around, and hopefully he's going to be all right for this Pittsburgh game, but we'll see. So for you, is this like, do they have to change stuff personnel-wise? Is this schematically with Zach Orr? I know that it's kind of everything encompassing one another, but Harbaugh here, they're considering it, and I think they consider stuff every single week, right? It's not like they just play a game and say, oh, we're not going to make any adjustments moving forward. That's not how it works, obviously. But I do think that Marlon is right, that something has to change. But to you, what is that thing that needs to change?
I don't know. And I'm not trying to be coy about it. It's like, okay, well, personnel, you saw Marcus kind of struggling, you bench him. You saw what happened with Eddie Jackson, who really wasn't playing all that great, and so be it. You got, Kyle Hamilton, who's somewhat banged up. Tre'Davious White is in the room, in the building. We need to see him, period. In the discussion. You traded for him, put him out there. But Brandon Stevens have had his moments of like lapses that just aren't Brandon Stevens like. And then the elephant in the room that I keep looking at is the fact that it's the middle of the field. And so clearly Roquan is not striking any fear in anybody's heart. when it comes to Trent Simpson, like, okay, he's not really doing much either. So schematically, what are you saying? I saw another statistic where it was like the Bengals were having their way in the zone looks that the Ravens were presenting and getting some completions. And so when you look at this defense, okay, like, I mean, like, what do you want me to say? Like, oh, we do a zone coverage, we're okay. If we go back and press up at the man, the line of scrimmage, we will be fine and catch interceptions. Like, I mean, honestly, I don't know. Like, something, but what is that something? And that's where, for me, when I'm looking at it, I'm like, man, why the suckiness of it all? Because it just, you don't just fall off the map the way they're falling off the map. And that's why I'm a little bit frustrated, because you're not seeing just, okay, maybe it's a moment here that could be corrected. So my thing is, let's see what Tre'Davious White can do. And like, hopefully Nate Wiggins, can just continue to mature and grow as fast as he can. Can't catch me, I'm a gingerbread man from a rookie aspect of thing. And let's just hope from a bigger picture, we're looking at, Kyle Hamilton not really, having too bad of an ankle issue.
Yeah, and obviously Hamilton's a huge part of what they do, and he didn't play for the final 2.5 quarters in that Cincy game, which is of note, but it's also of note, Q, that the Ravens have had Kyle Hamilton for all the rest of their games, and the pass defense is still not great. So, look, Hamilton makes a difference, but Kyle Hamilton can't play all 11 positions on the field. He has to be able to do his thing, and the other guys have to be able to pick up for him. So it's a big thing. But one of the things I want to kind of dive into here a bit, Q, is the man versus zone stuff, which you kind of talked about a little right there. Joe Burrow against zone on Thursday night had a 68.3 completion percentage. He went 27 to 37, 368, 3 touchdowns, 131.4 passer rating. Now you compare that to the snaps versus man, and it was a 31.7% completion percentage, 7 to 19, 60 yards, 1 touchdown, 63.5 passer rating. So you look at those numbers and the Ravens, the differences in zone versus man. And I think a lot of people are saying, well, all right, well, here's the solution. Is it just you have to play more man? But is that viable for the Ravens long-term to just kind of shift away from zone, go a lot more man, or do you think it's a little more complicated than that? And how would you go about doing something like that if you decide to shift away from zone and the differences that defense presents versus what man actually gives you?
Yeah, so man is supposed to be where it throws off the timing of a receiver and the quarterback. So, are you playing off or you're playing press? Clearly, from a man perspective, one slip up of the defender, now it's the advantage of the offensive player in the offensive scheme. There are picks, there are rubs, there's different bunch formations, there's communication error breakdowns. So that's where the man can be a disadvantage for defense. From a zone perspective, technically it's, okay, I'm playing a cover 3. So 3 high look, basically when a guy comes into my area, that's where I'm like, hey, he's now picked up by me. What I have an issue with is that playing that zone, you, Adafe Owe, David Ajabo, Tavius Robinson, Tavius Robinson, Nnamdi Madubuike. I know Jones is hurt a little bit, but, all those guys, you have to collapse the pocket, pressure, get to them, however you got to do it. Don't make life comfortable. If you make life comfortable, then you put yourself in a position where you got a Joe Burrow experience, and he's just going to pick you apart. Again, we're saying the same thing over and over again. If it is man, you got to play man and play it, and not just think that I'm going to get the guy down and everything is fine. If you play zone, it's communicating to one another based upon what the offense is trying to do. and making sure you're playing a strict zone and breaking on the ball and really playing it well. That's just it. I mean, my goodness. I mean, right now, the Ravens are in a situation where it's DEFCON 8, and it goes any lower, Armageddon is here.
Yeah, we are getting into more uncharted territory each and every week, and it needs to change quickly. So coming up in the final part of the show, Q mentioned Tre'Davious White. We'll talk about what his role can be and what John Harbaugh said about it. Plus, more changes the Ravens aren't considering making, and John Harbaugh made that very clear. Lamar Jackson getting MVP support. Kyle Van Noy flaming the refs from Thursday night. We'll talk about all that and more coming up on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by Game Time. The atmosphere and hype of watching basketball live is incredible. You got celebrity sightings, the sound from the court and the field, the crowd. And for me, I'm a big Denver Nuggets guy, and going to watch the Nuggets whenever I can is awesome. And looking forward to trying to see them again this season. And Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks. It makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters up the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And Game Time has tickets for all events, concerts, shows, and more, not just sports. So for this upcoming game, Ravens Steelers, big game on the horizon. You can be sure to check out seats and browse through them on Game Time Picks. You can look at super deals and other tiers of deals too. Plus, the app has so many great features such as Game Time Picks, seat views, lowest price guarantee, Game Time ticket coverage, and so much more. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Down the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Get and create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNFL, spelled LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. Welcome back to our final segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Ostraker still here with Qadry Ismail talking Ravens football here on Locked On Ravens. As always, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button in video form and follow along in audio form. Subscribe for 5 days a week at Daily Ravens coverage. Same show, both audio and video, so you're not missing out on any coverage, any which way you decide to consume our content over here on the show. Appreciate all the support, whether you're an everydayer, first-time listener, or somewhere in the middle. It all means a lot on the show. Now, Q, you mentioned Tre'Davious White, the Ravens, they bring him in. You and I didn't have a chance to talk about the actual deadline acquisition. We gave our predictions, but didn't really go the way that we thought. I know you were talking about Jadeveon Clowney. I was saying Calais Campbell, but the Ravens end up bringing in Tre'Davious White only. John Harbaugh talked about what his role could be. I had kind of floated the idea of maybe moving him to safety and seeing what happens with him there, because I think the Ravens maybe need more safety help more than they need corner help. But John Harbaugh ended up saying that he expects Tre'Davious White to be in the corner rotation, and they view him as an outside corner, which really should be no surprise to anybody. But look, we know Trey White is a heck of a player. The issue is that injuries have kind of sapped his career over the last couple of seasons. And I know, Q, with your expertise, you know how difficult it can be for a guy to come back on multiple serious injuries like that. So what are your expectations for Trey White here? And could he be an answer for what the Ravens need as the secondary looks to improve?
Yeah, so yes, I think so. I think that if, in fact, he can put himself in a good position to stay healthy, to get acclimated to whatever the nomenclature is here versus where he was, I think that's where he'll play free. He'll play, okay, cool. I'm going to use my talents and off I go. I think also it just adds a piece of depth that now you're not necessarily relying upon. Like, let's just face it, you don't want to put Marcus Williams in a position where he's going to have to make a play from depth because he's not doing it. And so with Tre'Davious, he'll probably be on the outside. It gives Marlon an opportunity to kind of float, maybe be possibly in the middle. And then, go ahead. And Marcus is not going anywhere. As much as we're frustrated with it, he's going to have to play. And now he's deep third, or he's deep half of the field. So there's options there when you have Trey White able to be on the field at the same time with Brandon and Nate and obviously Marlon, and seeing how that all will unfold.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that people are wondering, because obviously I mentioned, they're going to move Trey White to safety. When Trey White came in, everybody was talking about, what does this mean for Brandon Stevens? And I kind of said to people, look, Trey White's not coming in to take Marlon snaps. He's not coming in to take Brandon Stevens snaps. He's not coming in to take even Nate Wiggins and his snaps. I think this is a quality fourth corner, but everyone's like, well, what if you move Brandon Stevens to safety? And John Harbaugh was directly asked, could you move Brandon Stevens to safety? And he said, no, that's not really on the table right now. So the Ravens, John Harbaugh, everybody who's talking about Brandon Stevens moving to safety, I mean, first of all, John Harbaugh says it's not happening. Second of all, I think that the Ravens need him at corner. And the reason I say that is, look, they need him to play better. They need him to be the Brandon Stevens we saw in 2023. It was a night and day difference. Remember, Q, I mean, you and I talked about this all last season, especially in those Cincinnati games. Marlon was out both those games. Who was it that shut down Jamar Chase in both those games? It was Brandon Stevens. He locked him down. And now it's just a night and day difference. We've seen regression from him. You know, it's concerning, but the best version of this Ravens team has a quality Brandon Stevens at the second cornerback position. Now it's just a matter of him getting back to that form, however he does it. I don't know how it happens, but he needs to get back if the Ravens want to have their best shot at winning the Super Bowl.
Yeah, you know, and I think that's one of the frustrating points with this whole secondary look. Brandon was on this, you know, upper tier corner look and potential contract extension that, you know, he'll be known as one of the top corners in the league to just, I mean, what happened? You know, like maybe Jamar was like, oh, you think you had me, huh? And then just purely just destroying all hope. And now I think, you know, George Pickens now is going to be the guy that is going to be, you know, licking his chops. Mike Williams, clearly, you know, from a receiver aspect that comes in and feels like, hey, he's belonging. He's going to be out there in the mix as well. So my mindset is, okay, if you want to be paid, one, if you want to feel like you're a part of this team and like, yo, we got long-term goals in mind, it starts on Sunday against the Steelers, against a very good football team that likes to throw it deep down the football field. Their offense isn't stellar, but their offense, in particular Pickens, is no joke. And so putting you on an island, I think Brandon Stevens has a chance to redeem himself and say that he's an upper tier corner as well, and he's not washed. He has a lot of game left in him.
Yeah, and they need him. They 100% need him. Now, moving over to the offensive side of the ball for the Ravens, Lamar Jackson, obviously, Q leads that comeback after the Marlon forced fumble, 4 touchdowns on the day, and really in prime time makes another case for why he should be the MVP. And Micah Parsons, who the Ravens saw in week 3, came out and supported Lamar winning the MVP, saying that, you know, he should be the clear front runner, heaped praise on him. And I think we're starting to see more and more of those people come out, especially after what we saw Jared Goff do on Sunday night. That obviously sunk his MVP talk right then and there. But, you know, you have guys like Lamar, who I think to me should be the clear front runner. I agree with Micah there. Joe Burrow, the record conversation comes into play. I think if Joe Burrow had around the same record as Baltimore does, well, I think it'd be Lamar and Joe Burrow duking it out. But I know we talk about this every week, Q, but with each passing week, it just becomes more and more obvious, in my opinion, that Lamar is the MVP, and there's not really anybody else who can kind of hold a flame to him right now.
I think for Lamar to not win the MVP, it would take some historic numbers from Josh Allen, you know, just crushing it, or Jaden Daniels going undefeated for the rest of the year. And, you know, I mean, with the Giants and with the Cowboys in his division, I guess you have a chance. But maybe he has some historic game against the Eagles and, oh, my God, look at that. This is, you know, I just don't see that happening. Like Mike Tomlin trying to do the Jedi mind trick, talking about, oh, Mr. Jackson, man, you know darn well y'all had his number and y'all were feeling it when he was in years prior. Now all of a sudden, oh, well, we don't want to poke the bear. The bear's been poked, bro. Trust me. Lamar is knowing that he needs to exercise some of those demons that was happening at Acrisure or Heinz Field however you want to call it, but that stadium naming, we need to see redemption, whether it be Shot Bateman, whether it be definitely Zay Flowers, whether it be Nelson Aguilar. We need all kinds of redemption because them dudes sucked it up because Lamar's about to have himself a day. I think at the same time, Lamar is going to be the clearing the way MVP. I'm just statistical. We're not even talking about score because we know it's Pittsburgh. It's going to be always these tight games. I'm just going to say it's going to be a tight, weird blowout type game where Lamar just dominating. He's going to throw. I'm going to say he definitely breaks the 275 streak and just continues just to push the limit. So I'm going to say 287, one. Number two, he goes touchdown, Zay. I say Bateman in the corner end zone. I don't know the status of Isaiah as far as his hamstring. So I'm going to say Charlie Kolar gets in there in the red zone because they're going to have so much attention on Mark Andrews. Mark has this nice, just over-the-top, deep over route that he's famous for having, and he's going to score. What? Did I just say 4 touchdowns? And, oh, yeah, Derrick Henry seals it with the 5th and 6th touchdown. So, yeah.
Wow.
42. Do we need another touchdown? Keaton Mitchell goes ahead, takes it to the next level. To the hizzy.
I am with it. This is what I want. All right. This is hopefully a speak it into existence type of moment here.
This is the speak it into existence type of moment because you got to when you talk about what's going on with your defense. And it helps that Highsmith is not going to be that bookend to TJ Watt. And then all of a sudden, Derrick Henry going to walk up in there. And then all of a sudden, everybody going to be like Minka Fitzpatrick going to be at the line of scrimmage talking about, oh, my God, I got to go ahead and help out. And yet, and we're going to see Nelly over the top. And then it's just going to set the tone for things just going ahead. And then next thing you know, you're going to be in the red zone. And everybody's going to be like, oh, my God, we got to stop Derrick Henry. And then Charlie Kolar going to sneak around. Just go ahead, give it to him. Touchdown. And then Minka's going to be like, dang, we can't just let everybody just go ahead. I'm just going to come down over the top. And then you're going to have Mark Andrews just and then run after catch. And he's going to get it into the end zone because that's what he do. Defense getting a little tired, fatigued. Cam Hayward going to be thinking he's going to blow up the backfield. But right around the corner to the outside, to the hizzy. Yeah, Keaton Mitchell taking it 70. Then that's just the backbreaker because then all of a sudden Zay and Bate, like I said, they're going to get theirs as well.
Hey, I think that would probably be the best game of Lamar's career. Just everything considered, right? He struggles against Pittsburgh and
breaking the Pittsburgh jinx. Let's do it.
Hey, and remember last year, Lamar had probably about 5 touchdowns dropped between his receivers. So he could have had that big statistical day, but obviously the receivers let him down in that one. So big game for Pittsburgh and Baltimore for sure. And the last thing, Q, I want to dive into here is the referees, because Kyle Van Noy kind of went off on the referees on Twitter post-game after the Bengals. Such a weird officiated game on both sides. The Ravens had 11 penalties. Bengals only had 3, but I'd say calls missed on both sides. The big controversial one was the 2-point conversion where obviously Travis Jones kind of bears down on Joe Burrow's face mask. There was people call it a holding call in the end zone on Mike Gesicki, although some people think he fluffed. But no one's talking about Kyle Van Noy getting held and also Travis Jones getting pulled down too. So Kyle Van Noy goes, okay, so now folks will complain about the hold on for 4th down. That sets off the phantom face mask. Play ball. And so it's almost like, all right, you got one penalty here, but another penalty there. It's offsetting, but everybody's only talking about Burrow getting hit in the face mask. I think that's what happens when it's, a quarterback on the other side there. And, Lamar Jackson sometimes gets those calls, sometimes does not. But what was your take on the officiating on Thursday night? Because we know that crew was flag happy, but it got kind of crazy at points in this game.
It did. And I think, as much as they got past happy, I appreciated the fact that towards the end of it, they allowed them to play. And so you needed to win the game, not be given the game. I think that's one of the things that, I don't necessarily plug into the Bengals jungle, but I do know that from the bigger picture, on some of the generic message boards, everybody was like, oh my God, the referees. And I'm like, yeah, shoulda, woulda, coulda, but it wasn't. So don't be tripping. It's just the way it is. We've seen it, the Ravens, the flock, we've seen it hurt the Ravens when it comes to offsides penalties on Ronnie Stanley, motioning, whatever it might be. And you're like, wait a minute, what? That's not even legit. Holding penalties that down in Tampa on primetime stage, phantom calls on Tyler Linderbaum, Daniel Fa'alele. Like, what are we doing here? So we've had our moments too. It's just that y'all couldn't overcome them. Unfortunately, well, we didn't overcome them in KC as far as Ryan Stanley and all that, but we have overcome them in previous or other games. So I want to hear it. It was what it was. You got to live with it. Gesicki, much as you think, bro, oh my God, bro, you ain't getting that call. You need to make that catch. Oh, well, you didn't. We won.
Yeah. And again, don't put yourself in a position where the refs have to decide the game for you. And, Baltimore is up, and they were in a position where they could. With Cincinnati, they were the ones that needed the refs, or at least needed them to make a call on that incompletion, and it didn't happen. So Baltimore gets the win 35-34. And again, 2-1 in the division is huge, especially when you have 2 Pittsburgh games coming up. But Q, appreciate your time. Thanks so much for hopping on. I see that missile train, and it's still there in the background. Tell people where they can find you and what you're working on.
Yeah, it's missiletraining.com. Missiletraining.com is where you can find me, interact with me, and if it's about human or sports performance movement enhancement, that is the place where you can contact me. We can talk shop, and we can set up some really awesome protocols for you to get better as a mover, whether it be strength, speed, agility, doesn't matter. If you're an older person, 85-year-old is my oldest client, youngest client is 6. If you got that strong mentality as a young person to get better, I'm your guy. Missiletraining.com. But you can also see me on WJZ every Sunday. We break down our show, Purple Pregame, and it is awesome. Myself and Alex plays. However, every week, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Ostreicher and I, right here, every week, we break it down, talking Ravens, football, and yes, engaging with you, all your questions that you might be thinking about, we answer them right here on Locked On Ravens.
Absolutely. Q is with us every week, and you know the drill. All the links to Q's work will be in the description down below. Be sure to check out missiletraining.com and everything that's offered over there. Of course, over on WJZ as well. Q, thank you again, and thank you to everybody who tuned in today on this episode of Locked On Ravens. Coming up tomorrow, we'll be back. More Ravens content as we continue to dive into the Pittsburgh game coming up and the biggest storylines around the team. Stay tuned, and I'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.